NAWIC Northeast event. So NAWIC, in case you don't know, is the National Association of Women in Construction. And thank you very much to Paula for joining us and presenting us with this, what's going to be a very interesting session. So very much looking forward to it. And we've been joined by West T&T as well, so thank you very much. They'll be dealing with the questions. And yeah, that's, yeah, and just to mention again, so this will be recorded. You're welcome to put your video on, but yeah, please remain muted. And then if you have any questions, please put in the chat and start with Q, and they'll be picked up at the end by Paula. And so, yeah, without further ado, Paula, thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. So we will aim to finish by 1 o'clock, and so the plan is that I won't speak for very long. I'll give you an overview and leave plenty of time for questions and answers. So what I'm going to sort of go through is to tell you a little bit about me. Some people will already know me because I've done things with NAWIC and Wes T&T's before, and some people might not. So just a little bit about me, and then I'm going to go through something called TheLine and the who's, the whys and the hows of it, and then talk about some reflections that I've had since I set it up and what it means, and then tell you about something that I've been thinking about for a while to include them, whoever them are. Let's define that later. So who am I? Well, let's be very clear, you can't actually define a person in a few minutes. Even if we had much longer, you can't actually define an individual by job roles or other things. We're all very complicated human beings, but some job roles that I do have, I'm employed by Sir Robert McAlpine. I'm a volunteer for Wes T&T's and the wider Wes as well. I'm a trustee for Wes, as well as being head of the Climate Emergency Group. I'm also trustee for the Institution of Civil Engineers and the High Tide Foundation in Tees Valley. I chair quite a few groups, as well as the Climate Emergency Group for Wes. I chair the UK Regions Group for the Institution of Civils and a local climate business coalition in Stockton and other things. I'm an honorary professor of Teesside University, which I'm delighted about, and I founded TheLine and Primary Voices. There's a code there if you would like to join me on LinkedIn, but basically everything that I do is sort of, if you like, the Venn diagram is definitely engineering. I'm a civil engineer by trade. Equity, because I truly believe that we need to have a more equitable society, and the environment, because if we don't look after our planet, quite frankly, we're going to have nowhere to live and no food to eat. So everything I do is very much in that sustainability space. And if people want to put questions in the chat, I will pick up anything that's relevant as we go and pick up everything else at the end. So I set up TheLine. So why did I set up TheLine? So it's all about language, because language absolutely matters. Some people in this call may have been at the All In conference, and I had some comments back from that, and people did agree that language does matter, that it might seem very much like a joke to one person, but it could have a huge impact on somebody else, even if at the time that they don't say something. I've actually had people say things, and the person that's been the one that's caused offence has announced that they didn't, well, what I said didn't actually cause offence. Well, it's not really for you to decide, is it? But it does have a huge impact if somebody says something that's inappropriate. There's somebody else from the All In conference also said that culture and words are so important in the workplace. They're actually important everywhere, and we'll come to that in a second. Why did I set it up? Well, from my personal experience, I know that inappropriate language is still commonplace. I hear it all the time, and I also deal with the consequences of the people that are upset by it, and try and navigate on what we can do going forward in a constructive way. And in the moment, people struggle with a sort of dilemma. Am I being too sensitive? Am I taking something somebody said reasonably the wrong way? And then nothing happens, and then you kick yourself that you haven't done anything in the moment. So trying to actually define something in advance and think, no, actually, somebody else has had that problem and it's fine for me to challenge it, is a really powerful thing. Jonathan's added in his 2 penn'orth. Jonathan's a friend of Wes, who is the founder of Dash, and Jonathan happens to be a Black architect who also finds himself sort of making excuses for the behaviour of others. And he is totally right. As a society, we should know better, and unfortunately we don't. So who's the line for? So who is it that's actually suffering from inappropriate language? Well, it's difficult to actually define inappropriate language, but what is easier to define is sexual harassment, which very much includes inappropriate language as well. The sexual harassment survey doesn't, it gathers data for everything from inappropriate language to more things like touching, and all the way up to rape. And it's probably one of the more comprehensive surveys that's been done, that's across sectors, that's across the whole of society, whereas many other surveys are actually looking at a very small niche. So it's not that they're invalid, you've just got to take that data with that in mind. But this is very much across. It doesn't matter how you cut it, the incidences of them are far too high. And this is comments and other things of a sexual nature. The incidence of inappropriate language that isn't sexually related would be even higher. So we don't have that data, but it's very, very high. It's too high. And it's very, very clear that it isn't just sexual harassment happens to women, it also happens to men as well. But it's also very, very clear from the data that it generally only happens to men if they are in another group that is somehow making them different. So it could well be LGBT, it could well be ethnicity, it could be a disability, or even age. But generally speaking, and I'm not saying no men suffer from sexual harassment whatsoever, but generally speaking, men suffer from the same amount of sexual harassment as women, but only those that's in another group that's defined under the Equality Act. So it's happening all over. It's happening far too often, and it's happening to anybody that's different. So how did I decide to tackle it? Well, I decided to tackle it with a social media type campaign. I am not a social media guru by any stretch of the imagination. I have definitely sort of self-learned, and just my frustration for wanting to do something, this is what I decided to do. It's on 3 platforms, and anybody could submit any single quote they want to say, somebody said this to me, or I'll come to that, I said it to someone else in a second, but somebody said this. Does the general population, do the people that's following this, do they think it's over the line or not? Now, there's a few things to sort of be very, very careful on that. One is that if you're not sure, let's consider that to be over the line, right? Because if you're not sure, why say it at all, or why say it in its format? Why not say it in a different way, or don't say it at all? Anything that we do consider that is sort of okay has to go through the threshold of that sort of 75%-ish mark. So, you know, anything that's really, really, that everyone says isn't good, and it's over the line. Anything that people are unsure on, it's also over the line. So it's got to have at least a fair amount of people that believe that it's okay to say, to consider it to be the right side of the line. But even when it's the right side of the line, it's still not a green thumbs up, because in any given situation, what you say one day might be perfectly fine, and what you're saying to the same people, or a different set of people, or a different set of circumstances, might actually differ. So everything, actually, you should just think, well, I need to be kind, and I need to think. I will, and Joanne, can you take the link from Engineering Together in the line and drop it in the chat, please? On one page is all of the links to all of these things, but there is QR codes on there. And basically anyone can submit these things, and we just ask everybody by a poll, one question: do you think it's over the line? And they decide on yes, it is, it's over the line. You're not sure, or you think it's okay, and it's fine. It's whatever you think. So I had a few reflections because for a few reasons. One, didn't get that much sort of attraction, and also lots of things that I had in were very, very the same. Also, it sort of felt as if it didn't give anybody advice. It was just saying, this is what we think. Yeah. So I decided to set up language matters, and I set up language matters to complement this, to actually say, right, these are now things that we suggest, the good middle ground, the kind way that you can actually navigate this. So instead of just presenting people with a problem, to actually present them with a solution. So I introduced the Language Matters series and basically said, after reflection, here's some easy things that you can do. And simple substitutions, for example, humanity for mankind, chair for chairman. I mean, I've actually been called Madam Chairman in a meeting. I mean, is that a nonsense or what? You know what I mean? Let's just make it simple and say chair, you know. And a lot of these things are habitual. Let's not forget the habitual, and we all get in the habit of saying things. So what you've got to do is you've got to, I find, from personal experience, you've got to make a positive effort to make these changes, and it's hard to begin with, but once you actually do it and you get into the habit of doing these replacements, that it then becomes second nature. A good example is I do a lot of work in schools, and one of the things that I used to say to people was, so check with your parents at home. And then I actually got sort of politely taken aside at the end of a session by a teacher and said, you do know that most of these students don't actually have parents at home. They are being looked after by a variety of family members. Some of them are in care, and in a whole host of situations for a whole host of reasons, which has got nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me at all. But what does have to do with me is the fact that I'm actually saying to these students, your parents, which is then potentially triggering, it's untrue. Yeah, and it's also potentially triggering them. So an easy substitution is now I say, so ask the people at home, or your authorised adult, you know, the person that you know you need to get permission from. And by doing that, I don't know what effect it has on the people that sat in front of me, but it's something I had to really work at, because I just used to see your parents, but I used to have to really think about it, to exchange that word. But once I've got into the habit of saying it, I don't even think of anything else. Another thing is I don't say children, because at what age do kids want to be known as kids or children? Everyone differs for start off. So I now call them students, right? So it doesn't matter what age they are, they're students. The same with teachers. So this is one that I'm working on still, because I do still say Miss and Sir. And then I once was faced as an in-person event with someone that I thought, I don't know what gender you are. And I got myself in a little bit of a tiz at that point of time, because I went, Miss, I mean, Sir. And I thought, oh, blimey, what have I done? And I've made a deal out of it. As it happens, that person just sort of wryly smiled, and they said, do you mean me? Come and see me, you know, and just totally, and that was fine. And there wasn't an issue made of it. There doesn't need to be an issue made of it. But since then, I'm making a positive effort to say your teacher, again, to neutralise it, to actually constantly improve, so you don't end up in that situation. And it does take effort. But once you've got it done it and you've got into the habit, it really, really makes a difference. So keep it simple, keep it neutral, and keep it kind. But also forgive yourself if you make these silly mistakes, because we all do. So that takes me nicely onto them. So we, if you want to say us and them, we on the call tend to be, I would eat my hat if we're not all bought into this. We all want to be kind, neutral. We don't want to upset anybody. But then there's them. You know, we all know one of them, but actually them are not all like that, right? Whatever you're thinking, because they all vary as well. And by us doing what we're doing, whether we like it or not, we're actually alienating people. And And there's some at the far end of each spectrum. There's always them that's bought in, there's always them that's signed out. And you're sort of not going to change them. But those in the middle, the 70%-ish in the middle, that isn't the 15% either end, they're the ones that we need to make as many as possible, as close to the inclusive way of thinking as we can. And remember, within that bunch, there's people that just don't know. Right, so look at the picture there. It always makes me laugh, that picture, and I love it. So somebody gave a picture of a drain hole. This is what I want it to look like, and they know that it's a little sump and it has to drain away and it has to be lower. But the person that they gave it to didn't know, and they actually interpreted it that it needed to be higher. Now somebody's going to get their feet wet all the time on that shower, but you can't sort of blame someone. If they don't know, they don't know. You know, it's a communication thing. It should have been a minus arrow or a section line through, or, you know, any engineering detail that would float my boat. But if you don't know, you don't know. So there's those that don't know. Then there's those that actually could be convinced, but have been given another argument, something that's more attractive to them. Now, there's some people that are worse and are just on the other end of the spectrum, and you're sort of not going to ever be able to touch them. But how many are we actually sending the wrong way? 1 in 4 Gen Z boy is now saying basically it's harder to be a man than a woman. Now we could debate that for over an hour, but it's a frightening statistic that they actually worship Andrew Tate. And I'm not going to use any descriptive words for Andrew Tate, but let's just say that's not a good thing, in my opinion. So we need to bring them on board. And the other thing is that there's people that I know that truly, truly want to not upset anybody. And they've actually said to me, I've just reached a point now where I don't know what I can say. Everything I do is wrong. And we're alienating them as well, the ones that really, really want to learn and want to come across. So I thought, right, reflection, what are we going to do about it? Because we absolutely cannot continue like this, because all we're actually doing is creating another problem for all the right reasons, but nonetheless, we're creating another problem. So I've decided to do another little sort of mini series within TheLine and call it the silent majority. So we are, without a shadow of a doubt, I would say the majority on this call are a minority in whatever sector of our organisation. That's what NAWIC's all about, is what Wes, Tyne and Tees is all about, is and these sort of events are trying to sort of help with inclusion, which tends to be the minority. But the majority are the ones that without them, we're going to get nowhere. We need our allies, and we need to hear them. So we can't have them as silent, and we can't have them thinking that they can't say anything. And if they feel as if they are saying something that's correct and they're being unduly criticised, we need to hear them. We need to listen to them. We can't just say diversity is about us being absorbed into them. We also need to bring the others along on our same journey. So I have decided to do this, like questions and comments about this from in our sort of second half of this, our questions and answers and things, to see what you think. So I haven't actually launched it yet. I haven't put any links out there. The QR codes on that screen are live. But I just wanted to sort of get opinions before I launch it, to see if there's anything that people think is inappropriate in itself. Is there something on there that I don't see that could make it better? I wanted it to be bold, and I wanted it to actually appeal to the others. I wanted it to get to the same end. And by the way, the other forms that I asked, I always said it could well be that it's something that's been said to you or something that you've said to them and had another reaction. However, everybody on the platform seems to be in a minority group, which is what I sort of, when I looked at, and I thought, this is not what it's about. We need to have everybody else. So I'll come back to this slide during the question and answer if anybody's wants to have a look at it and has any comments on it. I might have spelled judgmental wrong as well. So I'll finish off before we get to the question and answers to say basically all of this is over to you. You may well be the victim, the one that gets things said to you that make you upset. However, we shouldn't forget that our language actually can hurt others. It might not be the group that we're sat in a minority, but it could be others. The use of students, the use of teachers, the use of people at home. There's all things like that we all make mistakes from. So we could consider our own language, and we can educate ourselves and then others. So I'm being educated all of the time. I'm in the LGBT group at Sir Robert McAlpine, and I get stuff wrong all the time, and I don't understand tons and tons of stuff. But I try and find out about it. One of the most regular things that have said to me, if I'm wearing something or promoting something with a rainbow flag, is I don't understand trans people. And I go, you know what, neither do I, but I don't need to. You know, I'm not a trans person, but I only had to do a very small amount of research myself to know that it must be absolutely horrible. The transition itself is a really, really difficult thing to do, and add on to it the things that they get said to them and done to them in society. You don't have to think about it for very long to know that that's hideous, and that we can all do better to actually make that person's life better. So you don't have to understand it, but you can find out about it. You can educate yourself about it. So we need to include everybody kindly. You specifically need to include those that have a different view to you. You can't expect somebody to listen to your views if you're not going to listen to them. And everything we should do is kindly, and we shouldn't forget them. We need the allies. Without them, we're not going to get anywhere. And obviously you can follow TheLine, send in your own polls, and you can help feedback about the silent majority and then share it, and actually even, you know, do poster bombing and stick it in your kitchen, and maybe not even tell anyone, just let it land there so they don't know it's from a minority member. So I'm going to hand over to Joanne for questions and answers, but I was going to probably, Joanne, I'll just go back to that other screen, the silent majority, if people want to have a look at it. But I can take it off if it's too much in your face.
It's absolutely fine. Yep, go back to it. It's no problem. Thanks very much, Paula. That was really informative and really interesting to hear. I mean, I'd just like to add a comment just to start off with. You mentioned a misogynistic influencer in your presentation. And I've got a 17-year-old son, and I think just because of how algorithms work, he gets sent content from that person. Yeah. And I've spoken to him at length, and I think I'd just advocate making sure that if we have young people in our lives, that we do speak to them about, you know, those kind of things, because, you know, they don't always share things with you, and just make sure that, you know, alternative points of view, and that they are educated, as you say, to make sure that we can stamp all of this kind of behaviour out.
Yeah, because let's not forget that particular individual drives around in, you know, lives in a mansion, drives around in really fast cars, and has a plethora of very thin, scantily clad ladies on his shoulder. And why wouldn't that appeal to a 17-year-old boy?
Yeah, and I think that's why I said young people as well, so that girls understand that they don't have to be like that.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
I mean, you don't have to look very far.
Both, yeah.
On social media and on the internet to find lots and lots of not very nice things to do with how some people portray what a relationship should be like. And
sure.
You know, how the interaction between and there'll be for the sort of people, but generally straight relationships, you know, the that sort of be told and do sort of relationship is is very much out there as the way that things should work.
Yeah,
And if
this
if
stereotype.
that's all people see,
Mm,
then that's all they know.
yeah,
It's
for sure.
very attractive. So any questions, anybody? Any comments? Come on.
So I'm going to start with a question, Paula,
Yeah.
if that's all right. So it's just, you've obviously, talked about, TheLine and where you've taken it so far. And I was wondering whether you've got any positive stories, where people have been grateful for the help and the suggestions that you've made, because they just didn't see before that there was any issues with it, some of the language that they were using. Have you got anything, any positive sort of stories that you can share, where it's a success story, basically?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few success stories of where we've asked for. I'll tell you, I'll stop sharing that side majority, but I'll bring it on, and I see there's a question from Caroline as well. Where we've had our allies into our gender affinity group at work, and that they have then been encouraged to speak up as an ally, and actually, I'm going to say little things, but it isn't little things. Like a female in a meeting has been spoken over or not allowed to finish. Yeah. And actually then, because that person has listened to stories and heard the other side of it, because they didn't know, they didn't see it. They never saw it in a meeting before, ever. And as far as they're concerned, if you don't see it, it doesn't exist, and we're all the same. So it didn't exist to them, right? But then they were informed and they were educated. So therefore, they were more aware of it themselves. So as a result of actually being aware of it, they then very politely spoke up for other people in the afterwards. Didn't make a big deal out of it at the time, but in the meeting got it actually. No, they weren't finished. That's all it needed, and then they were allowed to finish, and that made a massive impact to the young people that were being talked over, and then felt they had support. And don't underestimate even sometimes that people just getting things off the chest makes a big difference to them, knowing somebody else is in the same situation. Because I think if you're feeling vulnerable and negative things are happening to you, it's very easy to think you're the only one. And that doesn't solve the problem, but it does put people in a better frame of mind to enable them to maybe look at the problem in a different way, bit more, maybe more objectively, maybe to actually think about what we can do to going forward, and that matters.
Yeah.
Gonna pick some questions that someone.
Yeah. So the first question is from Caroline. What advice would you recommend to give to a young professional who's had something said to them that is inappropriate by a more senior person in their workplace, and they may not feel comfortable speaking up to them?
Yeah. So it's really difficult. There's no one size fits all, because it's all down to individuals. It's down to the person that's had things said to them, how comfortable they feel, how confident they are. It's down to the organisation. It's down to the individual that said it and who's surrounded with. What I would always suggest is you go and you try and find an ally, someone you trust, and that might well be somebody in the management structure. It could be somebody anywhere, somebody you trust. And then you need to think about what the consequences are of what you need to do with them. You could go and speak to them in a time when it's appropriate and just say, can I have 5 minutes? You could have regular check-ins with them and mention it then. You could choose not to mention it then and think, right, I'm just going to put in something for next time, on the assumption that something like this is going to happen next time. What would I have wanted to have said? And then think, right, I didn't do it then, but have yourself prepared for next time. Obviously, the top end of the scale is a formal complaint, and very few formal complaints go in, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why very few formal complaints go in. And I'm not saying that for everything everybody should go down a formal complaint route. To me, that's the very last you should do, and you have to accept that if you go down any route like that, well, any route for anything, that there's potential consequences. So with anything, you've got to think about what's the best thing that can happen and what's the worst thing that can happen. And I would like to say that if you mentioned something and you said, and you pulled someone up, that it would always be accepted well, and it would always result in positive action, but there's absolutely no guarantee for that whatsoever. So you've got to think of what's the worst thing that can happen. And I wish it was a different situation, but unfortunately it isn't. But go and find somebody that you trust, that you feel will give you, to me, constructive and honest advice. You don't want people to just always agree with you. That's the whole point. If you always have people that always agree with you, you're living in an echo chamber and everything's just wonderful, or it's just rubbish, or whatever you want it to be. You just compound whatever your feelings are. But find somebody that's going to give you sage advice, and more often than not, doing nothing is the way you land, and you do nothing about it. But I would say, if you were really kicking yourself, you wish you'd done something, then have yourself prepped for the next time something similar happens from that person or the next.
Okay, thanks, Paula. I think some of that advice can probably be for the next question as well, which was someone who has commented that they've been told that they are difficult to cope with, and they felt embarrassed by that, and are asking for some advice about what they can say next time during these types of conversations because they didn't speak up at the time.
Yeah. So again, not speaking up at the time, there's no point kicking yourself about it. What's done's done, right? We can all go back, in hindsight, it's a wonderful thing, and say, I wish I'd have done X, Y, and Z. Yeah. But there's no point doing that. So you need to, think about next time, right? So with all of this, and with all of everything to do with inclusion, whether it's job roles or performance, and let's put this down at difficult to cope with in a sort of performance bracket. Yeah. That's not to say that it's you're misperforming, it's that you might well be you don't have the training. There's a whole reason why you can't do something, or you don't know how to do something. It should be task related. So try and use your own language and the way that you think about things, and remove you from the equation. And it's easier said than done, but it shouldn't be about the person, it should be about the task. So why can't you do that thing? Right? And then what's a reasonable ask for any employee in that situation to need? Yeah, what thing do you need? A task, it's not what you need, it's what a person in that situation needs. So have you only been told once and you've forgotten? It's fine. If you don't use something all the time, you forget. Everyone forgets. It's not you, it's people, it's life. Have you not been properly trained? Has it not been explained in a way that has allowed you to understand? So you say, right, well, I know you've told me, but I've forgotten because I only use this once a month, right? So just please show me again. And then if you, if this is knowledge on computer settings, so be prepared as well. So what is it that you know and what don't you know? And instead of just going with a problem, say, go with part of the solution. So I know how to do this bit, but it's this extra bit that I don't know how to do. So you're not just going, I don't know how to do anything, because that's not helpful to anyone. Try and make it specific. What is it that you can't do? I mean, somebody saying you're difficult to cope with is very personal, right? And it's totally understandable that you've got upset. It's almost impossible not to take that in a way. However, how you react is, and how it makes you feel about it long term is down to you. And you can still be really annoyed, and it can still be really, really rubbish. But if you don't let it absorb like the rest of your feelings and the rest of your thoughts for a long time, will help you. And if you control what you say in a measured way, regardless of how you feel inside, then you'll come across better, and you're more likely to get a better outcome. And it takes a lot of practice to do that, to keep the inner fury or upset in there and not present it on the outside. But that's something, again, that the more you do, the more you become, it becomes a habit. So deal with the facts, write down the things that you can do, the things that you can't do, and then think, why can't I do it in a reasoned way? Is it because I haven't been trained? Is it because I've just forgotten? And it's fine to just forget. We all just forget. But just have it in your head. And then that difficult to cope with, what did they mean by that? Did you raise your voice? Did you get upset? Whatever you did, take responsibility for what you did and think of how you can do it different. That's not to say what you did was wrong. It's just saying, can you do it in a way that can be more productive, that can get out of the situation what you want, which is learn how to do, get more knowledge on the computer settings without it allowing it to upset you. Yep.
Thanks,
So,
Paul. That's good
yeah.
advice. Yeah, thank you. Next question is, if most of the current audience for TheLine are people from minority groups and are already engaged in this topic, how do you reach the silent majority? How do you plan to encourage them to engage with the new campaign?
So encourage them to engage. I've done them posters, which are very much which are very much aimed at. I'll put it this way: if you've seen that on the intention is, if you've seen that on a fridge, that wouldn't be for you, right? Because you're already bought into the other thing, right? Is to actually appeal to somebody else. So that's the intent. So that's how, ideally, to engage. How will we know? By the type of comments, by the type of things that are getting, and actually having things in the comments in the polls that actually make people think is the way to do it. And as a result of TheLine, I've actually been approached by, it's actually attracted attention by quite a few organisations. I've been asked to speak on it by quite a few different organisations. I'll know when I get somebody that I really have never heard of before. Then you know you've reached a different audience. But do you know all of these things? Do you always know what it reaches? No. Do I care? I don't really care so much. The sort of numbers and that sort of thing, I don't really care so much, because to me, it's the we're not going to change thousands of people. We're just not. Yeah, but can we change a dozen? If we change a dozen people that make lives hideous for 10 people that work with them, you change the lives of 120 people, so that'll be good enough for me. And I'll never know about it, and that's also fine.
Thanks, Paula. Next question from Jessica is, thank you for your examples, such as parents. It was a very good one to point out. Do you have any other examples?
So, right, the parents at the school sort of thing.
Yeah. Instead of using parents.
So as I say, anything neutral. So instead of saying, so anything that you, any person that you're talking to, instead of saying she or he, remember, not everybody looks like the gender that they want to look like, or they might not even know what gender they want to be, or, I mean, they might just look different, and it wouldn't be good if you sort of got it wrong. So I try not to now sort of, for example, say to genders, I'll say, and if I don't know people's names, I'll say like the quantity surveyor, the person doing the surveying over there, the third desk in, and I'll use more facts, and the one with the red jumper, that sort of thing that's indisputable, that everybody can see, that hasn't given, that I haven't assumed anything, it's an actual fact. So when you're talking to sort of when you're talking about people and sort of pointing people out, that's the sort of thing. And I always try and use they, or do you know what? Try and use the name. People say to me, what do you want to be called at? I'm like, well, my name's Paula, why don't you just use that? So for example, right, my I'm not gonna say who it was, right, an elderly relative that worked in a factory. There was, I'm going to guess by what they said, that it was an Asian gentleman, and they used to call him, his nickname was I'm not going to repeat it, was quite it wouldn't be considered acceptable now. A new manager came in and said, you're not calling him that, right? So then they went away and they went, right, we're not calling him that. And they went, so what can we call him? And they went through this whole bunch of other things that they could call him. So is that better or worse than what we were calling him before? Right. And these were all things that I'm not going to repeat because they weren't very good ways of describing somebody of a certain ethnicity. Right. And they went through all of these things, and he was explaining it to me, and I says, can I just ask, what's his name? Right. And he said, it's so and so. And I went, do you know what? Why don't you just start with that? And you know what? They never even considered actually calling this person by his name, because he'd had a nickname all the time that was related to his ethnicity. And they said, he's fine with it. Well, yeah, you might say he's fine with it, and you might have got used to it. But I worked on a site where they called the only female engineer on the site Flossie, right? And she was allegedly fine with it. But I'll tell you what, when I stopped calling her Flossie and I stopped calling by her name, and when the people used to say to me, Flossie, I thought, you mean so-and-so? She came to me not long afterwards and said, thanks for that. So she was fine with it. Oh yeah, I like being called Flossie. No, she didn't, right? She got used to it. So there's some examples.
Thanks, Paula. They're really entertaining. Next question is, how can we help encourage an environment where individuals feel comfortable enough to have open conversations in the moment?
Yeah, I mean, all of that's to do with sort of psychological safety. It's like, do you feel safe enough to have the conversations?
Yeah.
It would be lovely, wouldn't it, if every workplace, every household, you could just not say what you wanted, because this is the thing with this, is I'm not encouraging people to say what they want, because that's what's got us in this problem, right? It's to say something that's relevant and kind and suitable and you know, and appropriate, and is not intended to upset people. And in that, say what you want with that caveat. And it would be nice that people could say, I'm struggling with this and everything else. But unfortunately, we're a bunch of individuals and we all have good days and bad days. Let's not forget, we've all been horrible to at least one person in our lives. If we haven't, you've done out. You know what I mean? There's been times where I've certainly walked away from a conversation and thought, what on earth did I do? Or I've just had a bad day and I've just bit someone's head off by accident. And I've gone back and apologised later, but we all do it. It always starts with you. You can only control you, so you've just got to start with you and lead by example. And then I think that you start the conversations and have the difficult conversations, and do it, if you're comfortable, in the open. So I'll often say to people, and I'll admit that I don't know how to do that, right? Because I'll actually know that somebody doesn't know how to do it as well, and I'll actually think, you know what, I'll take it on there, because I'm big enough and ugly enough to look after myself. And I'll actually say, and I'll ask a question for others that I know that they want to, and then next time they might ask them themselves, because they might feel, well, Paula did it last time and she said you didn't know how to do it, so there's nothing wrong with it, and nothing happened. You know, I tend to find that if you ask for things in a measured way, in a reasoned way, it's a reasonable request, getting the training, finding out a bit more, then you almost close all the gates so nobody can say no. It's like, think about all the objections they can have and remove them, you know. So I've looked for myself, I couldn't find it, I need this because of that, so can you help please? Who's going to say no to that? But if you just go and go, I can't do my job because I don't know how to do this, you know, then it's less likely to get a comfortable conversation. But in the interim, until you get to that, find your allies, find the people that you can speak to, and then ask them how to get that stuff done. So I need to get this stuff done. I really don't want to go to that person because I don't think they're going to deal with it well. Who do you think I should go and see? Not only who do you think I should ask somebody you trust. How do you think I should ask? What do you think I should ask for? You know, if you just have got this massive open question, I don't know where to start. Find someone that can pin bits down, so then you're asking for a reasoned bit of whatever you're asking for. Hope that helps. And the last one?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it's about surrounding yourself with good people, isn't it? Is one of the things. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks. We've got a few minutes left if anybody's got any more questions they want to pop into the chat. In the meantime, there is a comment in there from Joe, which is, I wish we could ban the use of guys when referring to mixed groups. So you may wish to comment on that.
Well, I have a confession, Joe. I still accidentally jump into the guys thing, and we did have a very long conversation. In fact, I've had 2 long conversations with Insurat McAlpine, one with the gender group and one with the LGBT group. Guys is one of the things that very much splits people. So some people hate it. You obviously hate it, and I get that. Yeah, that it's associated with the male gender. Some people think it's fine, and I did sit in that camp, right? I was like, as far as I'm concerned, if I say guys, I mean everybody, and I don't really mean it gender neutral. However, I've been convinced I got educated by others and I listened to others and I got convinced that actually, since some people hate it, so why should I use it, right? And then there's definitely people that sit in the middle of like, well, in some circumstances it's fine, some it isn't. So the few things, so a good collective term, just a straight swap out. Instead of using guys, use folks. But I actually don't like folks. I don't know why. It just doesn't seem to. I don't know whether it's the way I say it or whatever. I don't actually like folks. It doesn't really come naturally to me. But that's a straight substitution. So where you would use guys, if you use folks, that's gender neutral. But actually, don't. So send it to, you know, hi, Bridges team, or hi, you know, administrators or project team, or you know, NAWIC. So I do use this as well. I do say sometimes NAWIC ladies, right? Because I know I am only sending it to people that are ladies, but I should also stop that as well. I should say hi, NAWIC members or whatever, you know. And that's what you've just got to do, is try and swap it out. So whether you believe guys is a good thing or a bad thing, why don't you just agree, if you do nothing else today, use either folks or use something else that's suitable. Again, use their name, use whatever collective thing is neutral that won't upset, because it does upset people, and it does obviously upset Joe as well. I mean, the amount of emails that in fairness, I haven't had so many lately, that I had, hi gents. Now, there is no getting away from gents, is there? You know what I mean? So there's times when I actually responded back to that and I said, so I'm just going to ignore this instruction because you obviously didn't mean me.
Yeah, I think we've all probably had a gents over the years at some point.
That's called being passive aggressive, by the way.
Yeah, sure. Another question's popped in the chat here, Paula. So it's about someone who's found that one of their flatmates is being pretty unkind, spreading rumours and lies about her and other flatmates. How can she politely say that she's not, you know, she doesn't want to engage in conversation other than, you know, civil conversations, because obviously it's really affecting mental health.
Yeah, that is not good, is it?
No.
I mean, so, right, gather your allies, right? So if it's also about your other flatmates, right, see what they feel about it. So first and foremost, acknowledge that there's a problem, right? And do it in a way that you feel supported. Then have a chat and say, what do you collectively want to do? Because if you're doing something on your own, you'll feel on your own, and then it won't be as powerful neither if everybody does the same thing. So what I would do is right, so here's another key point to make, right? More often than not, the people that are hideous to others have had others be hideous to them, and the somehow makes them feel a little bit better that somebody else has been treated unkindly. So the chances are that the person that's being unkind has got issues themselves, right? So try and deal with them as kindly as you possibly can, and this is where you've got to be the bigger person and try and sort of think about it and make it about the facts. Say, look, you know, it's and you know, be constructive. So, you know, say how it makes you feel. If you can get everybody together and then try and do it in a non-confrontational way. I'll stop sharing things up. A non-confrontational way, that's the best thing, you know, in a way that you can actually sit down with them and say, look, it's making us feel uncomfortable. These things aren't true. Why, you know, why are you doing it? We don't understand. Is there any way we can actually get over it? And ask the person that's making the lies up, you know, ask them in a kind way why they're doing it, and try and get to the bottom of what their problems are and why they would be doing it. But that is not a brilliant situation, unfortunately. All right, so I don't want to speak to one of the flatmates. Cases causing issues. How can I politely say that I'm not interested in speaking with her? Right, so the other thing is basically just to say that whenever, right, so if this person then isn't civil to you, just say, look, you know, I'd love to have a lovely chat with you at some point, but if you're going to say things like that, then I'm not interested in entering into this discussion, and just walk into your room or just walk away and leave them until they're not there. I know it's all far from ideal, but try and do it in a measured way. Try and do it in a time when you're do it constructively and you're not too upset. Because if you're upset, if you do it in the moment, right, you're never going to, or you're very rarely going to actually come across well. You're very rarely going to get across the points that you want. So write things down, write things how it makes you feel, write things the specifics of what they've said, write down why it isn't true, just to have them sort of facts, and then write down what you would like to happen, and then try and figure out a way, and ideally with your other flatmates, to say what you can do and what constructive, kind words you can use, taking into consideration this other person might be having difficulties themselves. And if you have to, just say, sorry, you know, I'm not engaging in this. I'll come back if you're willing to have a nice conversation. So
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I suppose it's making sure that you're not appearing confrontational with your other flatmates to this individual as well. Is probably something that I would probably add to that. But no, you've answered some brilliant questions there, Paula. And that's the end of the questions. So I'm going to hand back to Jessica for the close. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thank you very much, Paula. That was excellent, which I didn't have any doubts about that it would be. And thank you very much, Joanne, for taking the questions, and for Beth for your assistance as well. And thank you all for joining us. And yeah, I should have said, yeah, I'm Jess Newton, the chair of NAWIC North East, and we do have some events coming up. So if you're not signed up already, then have a look on Eventbrite. The link has just been posted in the chat. So we've got a site visit tomorrow, which you might just be able to make. There's maybe 1 or 2 places left. We've got our regular first Thursday informal networking session. So just come along. That one you do need to sign up to, because you'll get drink and some pizza. But do just arrive whenever you want to. And we've also got cushion decorating in May as well. So I've done that one before, which is why I asked for it to be put on again. So nice, creative and relaxing time, and just yeah, again, another informal networking session. And then we do have a few others which aren't on Eventbrite yet, but we've got another site visit in May, and then we've got a few CPDs and other webinars, so keep a lookout for those. Join us on LinkedIn, feel free to message me, and we'll get in contact if we can help you with anything. But yeah, thank you all very much, and hopefully see you all again soon. Thank you. Bye, everyone.